Chemical engineering is a tough degree to study. I'll break down how I tackled all of my courses, what I did every day, and how I prepared for the exams. I hope this will help you with your studies. This approach allowed me to graduate at the top of my class. I was lucky enough to study in a country with a thriving mining sector, and so the top student at our university, with the highest average final year grade across chemical, metallurgical, and mining engineering, was awarded this 9-carat solid gold medal of around 40 grams or 1.5 ounces. I also received this pure sterling silver medal from the Institute of Chemical Engineers for being the top student in chemical engineering. Our final year class was around 100 graduates. Before you judge, saying, all universities are different and mine was probably just an easy one, in engineering it is especially important that big multinational companies can be sure that engineers from all over the world are trained to the same standard. For this reason, the Washington Accord was created. It is a global agreement between the people responsible for auditing and accrediting university-level engineering degrees across the world. It ensures that engineers apply the same standards for safety, competence, and code of conduct. Trust me, nobody wants a chemical plant exploding because an engineer wasn't properly trained. This also assists in the mobility of professional engineers so that they can work freely in different countries. Before I start, let's take a quick step back. Because I think the most important reason for my success was not my study method. Instead, it was my motivation. I was lucky enough to find my passion when I was still in primary school. Thanks to some great teachers, awesome movies, and my first chemistry kit, I knew from a pretty young age what I wanted to do. Like I said at the start, chemical engineering is tough. Without my passion for chemistry, I don't think I would have made it through 4 years of studying. Some courses were just not interesting to me, although they are definitely necessary. It's difficult to motivate yourself to put in hours and hours into something that you don't enjoy. But I focused on the final goal of becoming an engineer, and for me, on the whole, the good outweighed the bad. So, make it easy on yourself. Do what you love first. This brings us to the first point. Every course and every lecturer is different. The chemical engineering degree, in its entirety, is designed to prepare students for a wide range of industries, jobs, and options. So, it has to cover topics which some students might feel is irrelevant, but they're critical for others. Now, this means a degree needs to cover everything from math to biology, from business principles to unit operations. Each course has a different combination of elements like theory, practice, and application. Some have a heavy focus on covering theory, while others focus on calculations. The approach to studying each needs to be different. The same is true for lecturers. Some tend to focus on fundamental proofs or the derivation of equations. My students hated me because all of my exams were open book. I focused mainly on the application of the equations to new, never-before-seen problems, testing understanding rather than knowledge of facts. So, how you spend each day after lectures and how you prepare for a specific exam should depend on the course topic, the content, and the specific lecturer. You need to spend some time at the beginning of each course thinking about what approach will fit best. Let's move on to my approach for every evening after class. There were 2 aspects to this. First, committing information to memory or rote learning. And second, developing problem-solving skills. Personally, I didn't enjoy mind maps. I found it difficult to commit information to memory in this way. So, in the evenings, I would read through the textbooks and summarize the text for everything we did in class. I used a keyword followed by a paragraph or a diagram. By writing down the information from the textbook in my own words helped me internalize and understand the concepts. In addition to covering the relevant theory chapters, I would spend the rest of my time, usually until late at night, working through the calculation problems at the end of most chapters. Now, don't make the mistake I have seen so many of my students make over the years. They attempt a problem halfway, get stuck, and then look at the answers. They think, yes, that's easy. Now I get it. Wrong. You've missed the most important part. The objective of the problems are not to solve them. It is to develop your approach or method for solving problems. For example, I would start by reading the question and trying to identify any relevant assumptions. Anything that makes the problem easier to solve without compromising the outcome. Then I try to recall all the equations and sections from the textbook, trying to see if one of them is relevant or if it fits the available data. With practice, I got better and better at solving problems, not necessarily getting the right answer. What you might not know is that many lecturers don't care so much about the exact numerical result. Instead, what they're looking for is how you tackled the problem. The way I think about this is, one day, when you're working on a plant and your boss asks you to solve a problem, he or she won't say, "Oh, by the way, you have to solve it using only this sheet of equations, or worse, just your memory." That's just ridiculous. In fact, they will encourage you to dig deep, ask colleagues, do internet research, consider as many options as possible, and find the best solution. I hear you say. It's obvious. You spent all your time working. You never had a social life and never enjoyed the fun parts of being a student. Well, you'd be wrong. My parents lived an hour's drive from the campus where I studied during the week. Because I worked hard every week, every weekend I could go home and spend it with my friends, watching sports, going out, and doing the things that all students do. It's all about balance. It should never be all or nothing. You'll either hate it or you'll burn out. On to the exams. Of course, in the weeks leading up to the exams, I did nothing but study. I revised all my notes to make sure I had committed as much as possible to memory. This was very important for how I approached an exam. When an exam starts, I would skim the paper looking for the quick wins, usually theory questions with an easy, clear answer. The next step would be to rank questions according to the marks and difficulty. Obviously, you want to tackle the easiest bits for the most marks first. Look, I didn't spend half the exam doing this. 5 minutes at the start, max. The most critical part of an exam is time management. If you get stuck on the first question and obsess about answering it, you will run out of time. If at any point I could see I was in a rut, I would move on to something else. Another trick was to keep an eye on the clock. If I saw there were only a few minutes left, I would go over all the questions I had answered, just to make sure I didn't make a silly mistake. Lastly, if you're one of those people who leave an exam early, you're an idiot. No one cares who finished first. You don't get extra marks for speed. So, if your ego is so big you think you don't make mistakes, I see big problems in your future. Personally, in my 4 years, I don't recall ever leaving an exam hall before the time was up. Now, you'll notice I never said anything about doing past papers for exam preparation. In my opinion, this may get you some easy wins, but in the long run, you lose. In fact, I did the opposite. For the week after we received back our marked exam papers, I would go over it with a fine-toothed comb, working and reworking the problems I couldn't solve, plugging the gaps in my knowledge. Always remember, the exams during the semester are just preparation. The real test comes in the final exam. In fact, in engineering, it is even more important. The reason being, most courses build on each other. If you leave a gap in your knowledge during year 1, by year 3, you'll feel lost in a minefield of unsolvable problems. Lastly, a quick word on the other stuff. Group work, tutorials, practicals, and projects. Never ever miss a tutorial or group session. They are the best time to practice your problem-solving skills with the help of others, like lecturers, tutors, or your fellow students. This is much easier than at 11 at night when you're all alone. Trust me. Then, practicals and projects. These are your chance to have fun. We did some awesome ones. We brewed beer, extracted caffeine from tea bags, and got to use some very expensive analytical equipment, even lasers and many more. I'll tell you a story. Years later, after I finished my degree and returned to university as a lecturer to join those who had lectured me, they told me my final year design project was what won me those medals. I achieved the highest mark in the history of the department, as assessed by a panel of engineers who worked in industry. I was shocked. In my final year, I chose to design a gas-solid trickle flow reactor to produce methanol. Now, conventional reactors to make methanol have a limitation called equilibrium. This limits the amount of methanol that you can make. The novel reactor I found eliminated this problem by adsorbing the methanol into sand that trickled over the catalyst. It was an absolute disaster. Scaling up the lab research paper I had found proved to be impossible. But it turns out everyone else stuck to the conventional reactors. I was the only one who tried something new. The panel was so impressed with the effort and innovation, I received a perfect score from them. So, when you have the opportunity, always dare to try something new. What you think is a failure might turn out to be your biggest success. I hope this will help you. If so, help me with a sub. And until next time, cheers.